what is the expectation from the two countries about the upcoming visit from Chinese President Xi Jinping to the United States? Mr. Ye, Chinese expectations.
I think China has the more expectations, not only focusing on try to form up a new type of the Sino-US relationship, but also focusing on some issue. Or maybe we can say it's time for both two countries' top leaders to discuss some of the detailed issues, not only focusing on the macro pictures or the whole country, the strategic framework. It's time now. We know the China and the U.S. relationship is facing a very critical moment, especially these two countries' economic situation are very crucial. So at this moment, I think it's time not only focusing on the big issue, small issue, and more practical issue.
I do not know exactly the big issue and the small issue, how you are terming it, but Mr. Sidney, what about the expectations from the U.S. side? Chinese side has been saying, let's make it non-confrontational. Is it possible?
Well, I think there are really almost two visits here. The first, of course, is the official visit by President Xi, but the second is with the American people writ large, especially in the context of the U.S. presidential campaign. China is looming to be a very large issue in that. Republican candidates are signaling, including today, that they will take a very negative view of China. So this is an opportunity for President Xi to try and rebut that, but it's also the possibility that this visit could not be as successful as it might be and cause the China issue to become an even bigger issue in the U.S. presidential elections. So I think this is a very high-stakes visit for everyone, but I would say especially for President Xi. Here in the U.S., President Obama is entering the last part of his term. He is looking for achievements, but really the real focus here in Washington is on who's president next and how China will play with that person.
How much is that kind of issues at the back of the Chinese minds when the Chinese side are planning for the trip and also putting out the possible talking points to both the American people and the candidates, and of course to President Obama?
I don't think so. For China, the focus of this visit is try to build a beautiful image or try to change the Chinese picture among the American people or American politicians. We all know every time when the election campaign starts, China will be an issue. But basically, I totally agree with the Assistant Secretary. This issue usually is a negative impact to this relationship. So I think it's very difficult for President Xi to change the whole picture or the kind of the scene before the president election. So in my understanding, it will go back to some issue has to be handled. It's not the perfect moment for China's president to try to engage with the new candidate or any candidate from any future president. It's too early to say that.
I see your point, Mr. Sidney. Is it realistic to let the Chinese president to preempt any kinds of possible negative ideas coming from any candidate, no matter how crazy they could be? We know some of them are, at least according to some of the mass media coverage that we have seen, or rather focusing on some of the most important fundamental issues that whoever is in the White House needs to handle carefully together with China.
I think it's, of course, impossible to handle every issue, but I think President Xi does have the opportunity to shape the overall relationship going beyond just the time of this one visit. The big focus now in the U.S. is, of course, the economy. China's recent effective devaluation of the renminbi is seen as a very important issue by many people, both on the Republican and the Democratic side. The whole issue of the stability of the world's economy and the role that China plays in keeping the world economy growing. I think that is really going to be the #1 issue, and I think that is an area where President Xi could either give reassurance or could give rise to further concern. I think that is probably the biggest single issue that people in the U.S. will be focused on.
Mr. Ye, before I let you to comment further, in our program over the past 1 week, we've been focusing 3 times on the discussion of Chinese economy and the impact it is having for the rest of the world. Some suggest it's been exaggerated. Others say we still have to look and see, while Chinese side are also learning the new tools to be used. Having said that, though, let me go to you and respond to what Mr. Sidney just said.
That's quite an important issue for the economic situation. But when we talk about the renminbi's devaluation, we should pay attention to a very essential fact. Now the Chinese economy faces very difficulties. So it's really difficult for China to, China want to stabilize the ratio of the RMB, but doesn't mean China has to make the commitment or making any ensure to any country that the Chinese currency will go up, never going down. It's totally difficult to, and totally not possible for any currency in this world to make this commitment that we always go up, we're never going down. It's not possible.
It's interesting because, Mr. Sidney, there has also been a lot of debate here in China as to what the Federal Reserve would do with its own interest rates and whether to raise it or not. That would certainly have a huge impact for the rest of the world as well. Given the fact there were several times quantitative easing with the U.S. economy over the past few years when your economy was running into difficulties. So when all of these topics coming together, what kind of mindset do you think, Mr. Sidney, that the leaders from both sides should have, given the importance of their economies of the world, for the world?
Well, I think the message most people are looking for is some sort of stability. The recent turmoil in the stock markets and the currency markets come at a time when, as you point out, the U.S. economy has been recovering. The Federal Reserve is considering raising interest rates in order to prevent inflation in the United States. But at the same time, after almost a decade of economic downturn, people are worried that it won't continue. So I think a stable future for the economy is what people are looking for.
Right.
But that is a hard job, as Mr. Ye has pointed out, for any leader, whether it's President Obama or President Xi. But just because it's a hard job doesn't mean people won't expect them to do it.
Right. Another hard job, Mr. Sidney, of course, is to mill-to-mill relations between China and the United States. I'm talking, of course, about the military relations. Some of the scholars in Washington, whether you say extreme or not, they already talked about the fact that, as they see it, the relations between Chinese and the U.S. military, in fact, is even less close than what the U.S. had with the former Soviet Union during the height of the Cold War, they say. What do you think could happen to the military relations between these two countries with the president's visit? Mr. Sidney.
Well, you're correct that their military relationships between the United States and China have a long way to go. But I think everyone recognizes that in the past couple of years, they've made a lot of progress. The signing of agreements regarding communication, particularly incidents at sea. These are important moves forward, but they're far from enough. We really need to, on both sides, work to increase cooperation. The biggest sticking factor in this is, of course, the cyber issue, as you highlighted in your original report. The cyber issue, which of course goes well beyond just the military side, appears to be the key issue where not much progress has been made recently, and in fact concerns continue to be raised, including the recent announcement of the break into the Office of Personnel Management and the theft of records of tens of millions of U.S. government employees, including myself, as a matter of fact.
All right.
So this kind of cyber issue is an area where both sides need to work to find a way forward.
What about from the Chinese side, Mr. Ye? Military relations, of course, when Ms. Rice met with Fan Changlong, the vice chair of the Chinese Central Military Commission, they talk about that, and they use several words to be healthy, stable, and reliable. How much importance is the cybersecurity issue in this relations, and what about the other proportions of this military-to-military relations?
For the cybersecurity issue, it's not only the military issue, it's also the national security, even though the people's daily life. At this point, I fully agree with our American friends that everybody has their own concern, but we should also know you have your own concern doesn't mean you have the every right to put your finger on another's, because we are also the victim of the cyber espionage and the cyber infiltration. So it's the moment for both two countries to share their opinion. Doesn't mean this argument or want to accuse another side. This means lay a foundation for the communication and dialogue. In this part, I don't think cyberspace security only means the difficulty or dispute between these two countries. It also means the opportunity for this country to lay the cooperation, just like almost 10 or 12 years ago when they launched the cooperation on the counterterrorism. It's also the moment. But for the military to military dialogue, there's also, we should know, it's totally unreal to make the comparison between the US and the Soviet Union era and US and China relationship. It's totally different, because we know going to the 30 years ago, there are thousands of the nuclear warheads targeting on each other. Now it's not this moment. So still, the military cooperation or the dialogue may be not as well as the economy or another issue, but still there's a lot of progress.
It is moving ahead. But on the other hand, we did not mention some of the most important issues. For example, the security issue on the East and the South China Sea, territorial disputes in Asia, U.S. ally relations with some of the Asian countries vis-a-vis China's debates with these countries about the territorial integrity. Mr. Ye, how much do you think this state visit would be able to resolve some of these quite long, shall I say, time issues?
Frankly speaking, I don't think this is the moment to resolve the issue. I think this is the moment to handle the crisis or to find a way to avoid the crisis escalating. So it's
any specific thing you're having in mind as to how to avoid any possible
try
crisis?
to make some on-field resolution between the two military mechanisms is one of the options. Try to set up some hotlines, also the options. So I don't think we can solve the problem. It's not the best moment, but we can manage this issue.
Okay.
And manage is quite important.